who has seen the world in different shades. Yellow, green, and even grey. People wonder what I will become, but that knowledge is only given to some. An artist, a builder, what will I be? But that decision is only up to me. I am a girl who has seen the world in different shades. My uniqueness is what people wish for every day.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tanya Ward, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Children's Rights Alliance here, a national umbrella organisation with 140 member organisations. And I'll be your MC here today. So look, I wanted to welcome you here to this really important event that's been organised by the Department of Children in association with the Council of Europe and the Department of Justice. And I have to say, it's a very timely event in the Irish context, because in Ireland, there's a huge amount of reform taking place in the family law courts and in the childcare courts as well. And I suppose the purpose of this conference is to look at the best interests of the child in family law proceedings and parental separation, but also in childcare proceedings. And I don't have to tell you how important this subject is from a children's rights perspective and how difficult it is from a children's rights perspective. Because we know if we don't get this right, it causes tremendous harm to children and young people. We know it leaves lifelong adverse consequences that affects their development and their life chances. So it's really important that we actually address it and we support our family justice and legal systems to get this right. Now, the purpose of today's event is to really look at how we get this right. What does it look like when we apply the best interest principles? What are the changes we need to make to our legal system? And why that's important is a group of experts are actually meeting here in Ireland tomorrow and on Wednesday. And they're going to be working on a recommendation in this area. And why that's really significant is because the Council of Europe is showing leadership. They want us to get it right in our national countries. They want to see the best outcomes for children and young people going through these very difficult situations and scenarios. And they are all ears. So please be open, get your ideas out there. There's this real opportunity for change. So just in terms of what this morning's event will look like, we're going to have inputs from the Minister for Justice, or from the Minister for Children and the Council of Europe. But then we're going to have a session that will look at the lived experience of children and young people to really get us to understand what are the issues that we need to address. We'll then have a follow-up session looking at the application of the legal principles and the kind of changes and best practice that will be really beneficial in this space. So just in terms of tweeting and hashtags, the hashtag for this event is the Voice of the Child and the COE Pres Ireland. So it would be great if you could tweet and use those hashtags. Now, we are in a heritage building. It's a fantastic building to have an event like this. And I know it will be very pleasant for international colleagues to be steeped in the history of this building. But here's the challenge, the Wi-Fi is not great. You'll see on your system, you'll see on your phones, on your laptops, there's a free Wi-Fi connection. So I've been in the audience in this room before. I've got the odd tweet out, so give it a go if you can. But I have to say, there are people listening as well online, so they'll have a better chance probably of tweeting in relation to the event. So before I pass on to the Minister for Children, I did want to just cover a few housekeeping rules. So this is a nice one to announce. The event has a carbon offset. So we're pleased to advise that they're offsetting the CO2 emissions from the 3 days of the meeting here at Farmleigh with the planting of nearly 3,000 trees. And this will be done in partnership with Self-Help Africa and will include native Irish trees here in Ireland and native planting in sub-Saharan Africa. Just to let you know, today's event is being recorded. It's going to be in French and English. If you don't feel comfortable about being recorded, can you please go to the reception desk and contact a member of the Department of Children, and they will try and resolve it with you. And just to say, there are no drinks or food in the ballroom and only in the conservatory, and I already broke that one earlier on today. So now I'd like to pass on to the Minister for Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth. The Minister has had a very busy few weeks, really working very hard to secure as much funding as possible for children and young people. And I suppose one of the Minister's big achievements as his time as Minister is going to be what he's managed to achieve for the early years sector, to be honest, in this budget. An additional 300 million. It's likely to reduce parental costs of childcare by up to 25%. So really a very significant achievement. So it gives me a great honour to invite the Minister to take the stage and outline what's going to happen today in the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our conference. Hear our voices, the rights and determination of the best interests of the child in parental separation and childcare proceedings. And it's a real pleasure to be with you today here in beautiful Farmleigh House. It's nice to see so many people being able to join here in person. As the local TD for this area, I should welcome you to my own constituency as well. And I want to particularly welcome those who are attending online. I know there's a significant number of people watching in, and it's great that we have this ability, as well as being back together in the one room, but the ability to reach out and have people from across Europe observing and being able to participate in our conference today. And I'm really honoured to be opening this conference. Would like to give a particular thanks to our MC, Tanya Ward, and to thank all our speakers and all our participants today. We really appreciate you taking your time to come here and join with us today. And I think we've quite an exciting day planned, and we have input from a range of really interesting speakers. So I'll be followed by Christophe Poirel from the Council of Europe. Then we'll be followed by Lem Sisse, OBE, who's going to be delivering our keynote address, but he will also moderate what we're calling a fireside chat. And in this old building, that's actually quite an appropriate term, but a fireside chat with 4 amazing and eloquent young people who have recent experience of being in care in Ireland. That'll be followed by our Balancing Rights session, and that has a range of distinguished speakers from all over Europe, including Ireland. That will be followed by plenary session number 1, Assessing the Rights and Best Interests of the Child in the Context of Care Proceedings, and that will be chaired by Eamon Fisher of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. The next session is an international account of incorporating children's views in developing future standards on children's rights in family proceedings, and that will be followed by a session on the evolution of the best interest of the child in Ireland. That's then followed by plenary number 2, entitled The Rights and Best Interests of the Child in the Context of Parental Separation and Family Law, and that's chaired by Niall Muldoon, who's the Ombudsman for Children here in Ireland. And finally, at the end of the day, my colleague, the Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee, will close the conference. So Ireland currently holds the presidency of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, and as Minister for Children, I'm delighted that one of the 3 chosen priorities for Ireland's presidency was Hear Our Voices, and that has a particular focus on youth engagement. And in May of this year, I opened the first conference of Ireland's presidency, which was on child and youth participation for Europe. In 2016, the Council named the participation of all children as a priority in their strategy for the rights of the child. And this year, the Council committed to giving a voice to every child as a strategic objective of their revised policy, and that will run all the way through to 2027. And today's conference focuses specifically on hearing the child's voice in both childcare proceedings and in parental separation. And arguably, no decisions in a child's life are as important as the decisions made during these proceedings. And this is where fundamental decisions are made about who a child will live with and where that child will live. And it is only right that the child's voice be heard and that the child's best interests be at the very centre of any decisions that will have such a profound impact on them throughout their childhood and indeed throughout much of the rest of their life. We're honoured to have a number of delegates and representatives from the Council of Europe with us here in Ireland today for this event, and they include Christophe Poirel, the Director of the Human Rights Directorate, Daniel Kangemi, Head of the Department of Human Rights, Justice and Legal Cooperation Standard Setting Activities, and Regina Jansdottir, Head of the Children's Rights Division and Council of Europe Coordinator for the Rights of the Child. In our country's past, in Ireland's past, the voices of young people have been silenced far too often, and sometimes silenced in a truly shameful way. And the importance of learning from our past, learning from our history, of building a society in which we do not fail our children, as happened in previous decades, that means that children's and young people's voices must be heard and must be taken seriously by those in positions of power. And the subject matter of today's conference is extremely timely. Ireland is currently undertaking a number of major reforms that aim to improve the experience of children and families who are involved in family court proceedings, to ensure that children's voices are heard and to ensure that the best interests of children are at the heart of any decisions that are made that will affect them. At present, in Ireland, we have no specialised family court structure. And my colleague, Helen McEntee, the Minister for Justice, she's leading a reform project to rectify this. And I know she'll be updating you on the progress of that reform when she addresses you later on this afternoon. And these important reforms are an important opportunity for us to put the voice of the child and the child's best interest at the heart of these proceedings, both in cases of parental separation and also in childcare proceedings. And I'm working closely with Minister McEntee to ensure that children are at the very centre of the new package of reforms that the government is bringing forward. My own department recently enacted legislation to extend and regulate the guardian ad litem system for children involved in childcare proceedings. Guardians ad litem work with children and young people involved in childcare proceedings to ensure that their voices are heard and to act as an independent voice to advise the court regarding the child's best interests. This legislation creates a strong presumption in favour of the appointment of a guardian ad litem in childcare proceedings and clarifies the dual role of a guardian ad litem. This new legislation also places new obligations on the court to hear the voice of every child before making a decision about their future. Under this Act, the court is also obliged to regard the best interest of the child as the paramount consideration. My department is also reaching the end of a lengthy and in-depth review of the Child Care Act 1991. That law, the Child Care Act, is a wide-ranging piece of legislation which, at its core, seeks to promote the welfare of children who may not receive adequate care and protection. The Act is a key piece of legislation whereby the state, as a last resort, may intervene to take the place of parents. We've listened carefully to the concerns and suggestions of stakeholders, including children, and researched international best practice. And I plan to bring heads of a bill to government later this year to revise, to update, to modernise this Act and to make sure that Ireland can uphold the best interests of this very vulnerable cohort of children into the future. Climate change and sustainability are two issues where children and young people have used their voices to raise awareness for us adults, and I think that's been magnificently demonstrated over the last number of years. And that's why I'm particularly pleased, and I'm glad Tanya referenced to the fact that our conference today is fully sustainable and carbon neutral, and I want to thank the team in my department for making that so. I want to thank all of those who've made this event possible, in particularly the team from my own department, officials from the Department of Justice, the Department of Foreign Affairs, and of course from the Council of Europe. I'd also like to thank all our esteemed adult expert speakers whose contributions are going to be so engaging and insightful today. Thank you not only for so generously sharing your time and expertise with us, but for all the work you are doing in this vital area during every other week of the year, continuing to advocate for the rights of children and young people. And finally, I want to thank the young people who will share their experiences with us later on, and this will ensure that all of our focuses during the course of the next 2 days are absolutely kept on what we should be looking at, and that is the rights of children, the rights of young people. I hope today's conference will not only be an enjoyable and informative experience, but it will be a point from which practitioners and stakeholders can drive on with renewed vigour to ensure that children across our shared continent are given every opportunity to participate in the decisions that affect them, to have their voices heard, and to have their best interests upheld. Gurv Mila Mahabid, thank you.
Minister, thank you so much for that opening statement. I think it's really encouraging to all of us to hear the commitment of government around the voice of the child and family law reform, also to hear your commitment around promoting children's rights in the reform of the Childcare Act, which is probably going to be one of the single most important legislative changes for children and young people in Ireland in the bones of about a 10-year period. You can see we have an extraordinary list of speakers here today. The departments in the Council of Europe and Department of Justice have put tremendous amount of work to bring this conference together. And I'm delighted to introduce Christophe Poirel from the Council of Europe, and who's the director of the Directorate of the Human Rights Directorate of the Council of Europe. And Christophe is going to outline, I suppose, the key human rights law in this area at the European level, but he's also going to talk about the Council of Europe's interest in reform of family law reform legal systems in Europe. Thanks, Christophe.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all. Dear Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I must say I'm very pleased and honored to address to you today, jointly with you, Minister Gorman, at the opening of this conference on the rights and best interest of the child in parental separation and care proceedings. Thank you very much, Minister, for hosting this event. As was just said, I think it's a clear sign of your personal commitment to this issue, which is, I think, very, very important. Thank you very much also, Minister, for being with us for at least this morning. It's good to have you in our midst. And thank you also for the wonderful hospitality. We had a very great evening, I must say, last night in this magnificent place. So thank you very much indeed. And I would like also to welcome all the participants. It's good that we have so many experts, not only from Ireland, but also from other European countries. I think this type of conference is a unique opportunity for experts to exchange on their respective experiences. It's perhaps the added value, in a way, of those events, that people can share their practices, draw good and possibly negative experience, draw lessons from this experience. The Council of Europe considers the best interest of the child to be a fundamental, and I want to underline fundamental, underlying principle in all actions concerning children. In order to effectively safeguard the rights of children, we need to act in their best interests. Although the European Convention on Human Rights does not explicitly refer to the best interest of the child, or children for that matter, the European Court of Human Rights has developed, I must say, a large body of case law dealing with children and their human rights, and has on numerous occasions affirmed that the best interest of the child must be a primary consideration in all actions concerning children. This indicates, I believe, that respecting children's best interest is in fact a way to upholding their human rights. It is no surprise, therefore, that the principle of the best interest of the child features prominently in many of the Council of Europe legal instruments, primarily but not exclusively in the area of the rights of the child. I would just mention a few of them. The first one is, of course, the European Convention on Human Rights. But there are others, the European Convention on the Exercise of Children's Rights, the Convention on Contact Between Children, concerning children, the Lanzarote Convention on the Protection of Children against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse, and finally, the Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence against Women and Domestic Violence, the so-called Istanbul Convention. These are just a few of our legally binding instruments. But I must say that notion also appears in many recommendations that have been adopted by our executive organ, the Committee of Ministers, as well as different tools and guidelines. Ensuring child-friendly justice for all children and the child's right to be heard are two strategic objectives of the current Council of Europe strategy for the rights of the child 2022-2027. And my colleagues who are here, who worked hard on the preparation of the strategy, are very pleased that the Committee of Ministers finally adopted the strategy. They have constantly been at the heart of our work, and they will continue to guide our activities in the organization and our member states for the years ahead. The best interest of the child will be at the epicenter of this work. To give a figure, almost 1 in 11 people worldwide are involved in family disputes. Their legal problems relate very often to divorce and separation, child arrangements, or more dramatically, domestic violence. Children suffer disproportionately from decisions that are being taken in these circumstances. Their disempowerment can make it harder for them to recover from the effect of these decisions. It is therefore our responsibility to ensure that children are also part of the solution, that they have access to justice, and are part of the decision that an authority or a judge takes. These situations, you are all experts, so I think you know that much better than I. These situations are often the first encounter of a child with the justice system. And you all know very well, first times and impressions always matter. Such experiences shape children's lives, their development, their well-being, and also their understanding of the justice system. The reality, a justice system fails if a child feels that he or she is a victim of injustice, or when his or her voice was not heard. It is therefore, again, our responsibility to ensure that justice is also done for children, with children. Our justice systems have been designed mainly with an adult population in mind, and that's a bit natural, I would say. And still, such systems are often difficult to access for adults, let alone for children. Child-friendly justice systems are designed to place the child in the center so as to be able to assess their best interests when difficult decisions have to be taken. This is what guided the adoption of the Council of Europe guidelines on child-friendly justice, which addresses administrative, criminal, and civil justice systems and look at the process before, during, and after a decision is taken. I would like to salute on this occasion the efforts of our member states, as is the case of Ireland, to adapt, inspired by these guidelines, their judicial systems to the need of children and the valuable work done by practitioners and civil society to support such efforts. So, Minister, many good wishes in your future endeavors and also to your colleagues in the Ministry of Justice. None of us is naive to the practical difficulties of implementing children's participation rights in family law proceedings and of putting in place an effective child-friendly justice system. The reality in many countries is, and you certainly don't need me to tell you this, that there remain long-standing practices and attitudes that need to be overcome, not to mention a wide range of legal, social, and economic obstacles. Family law systems in many countries operate within the context of, unfortunately, limited resources, and that is not only applicable to this sector. And children's participation is affected by what is perceived as affordable and doable. As a result, children are often not asked to express their views. to exercise their right to participate in judicial decisions that affect them. They have to ask for it. And even then, sometimes their right is not properly respected. Their voice is unfortunately too often not heard. Furthermore, children's interests may conflict with those of others, in particular, of course, their parents. Many of the family law cases that are heard by the European Court of Human Rights are exactly about how to draw this fine balance between different interests. For instance, when children are witnesses to domestic abuse, ensuring that family law responses to the aftermath of domestic violence do not perpetuate the violence itself is a crucial element in upholding the best interest of the child. More generally, it appears clearly that family law and policies in member states should be further developed to come to the point where in our justice systems, the child's right to be heard will be fully ensured and children's rights and best interests are upheld in line with our common human rights standards. This may also possibly require further action and guidance at the European level. The Council of Europe, through its Intergovernmental Committee of Experts on this matter, is currently preparing new legal instruments and implementation tools to guide practitioners on the rights and best interest of the child in the context of parental separation and in care proceedings. Today's conference will be an occasion, and I think for us, Council of Europe, it's very important, it will be an occasion to share developments and good practices, as I said before, in Ireland and other member states, and to reflect on further action, but also to, we hope, provide a valuable input to this work. Tomorrow, the findings of this conference will certainly be discussed at a hearing of stakeholders, umbrella organizations, professional associations, and international networks, and I know that many of you here represent those bodies. They will cover selected issues related to the best interest of the child and his or her rights in parental separation situations and care proceedings. The conference and the hearing of stakeholders will provide, hopefully, as I said, a wealth of information and ideas for the work of the expert committee, which will meet immediately after. And let me profit of this opportunity to thank again the Irish authorities. Thank you very much again, Minister, and the Irish presidency of the Committee of Ministers for their hospitality and the commitment to the topic. If I may say, Minister, we are very glad in the Council of Europe to have such a committed presidency, especially at a time when Europe is facing a very difficult situation. It's good to know that the presidency is leading the organization with a strong commitment to our values of human rights in particular. Dear Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it's our view that shielding children from the family law system is not the best way to protect them. It rather silences them. Children who understand that they have rights, what are those rights, and who also understand the processes in which they are involved are empowered children. They are reassured by the fact that they can rely on adults and on the justice system to respect their rights. They grow up, and I will be interested to hear later the group of young people, they grow up knowing that our society and our justice systems are treating them with respect and dignity. That we are not failing them and that we are considering them as full members of our society. With that, I wish you a very fruitful discussion and trust you will find good ways of protecting children's rights throughout participation by providing them with the right path through the justice system and by making sure that their rights are upheld. As all of you have a vital role to play in making that happen, and I think when I say all of you, I should rather say all of us. And it is very telling in this respect that the conference will start with a discussion with young people with experience of care and family law proceedings. Not being myself an expert of this matter, I very much look forward to the discussion with the young people. I participated in other conferences where guests living a specific situation can give testimonies. I think is the best way to be more familiar, to better understand what is the reality of the situation of the people. So from that perspective, it's very good that you, the young people, are here, and thank you very much for that. With that, thank you very much to all of you, and let's hear their voice now.
Thank you, Christophe. I think the one thing that really stuck out for me in your input was the statistic. 1 in 11 families are affected by parental separation or in a family law dispute across Europe. So that just tells you the scale of this issue. We all know someone affected by this. We might be affected by it ourselves, someone within our family, someone within our community. So it's crystal clear. It's something we need to resource. But the other thing that came through, I think you talked about affordability, seems to be the name of the game sometimes when countries are responding to the challenge here, and resourcing of family law courts are really important. I know in the Irish context we get a bit frustrated when we see the commercial courts that operate really well, are very well resourced, but this is something that happens across Europe, and I suppose the key is here is to ensure that our family courts are able to operate in the same way as the commercial courts, are valued in the same way and are resourced in the same way as well.